Everyone, lots of news going on as usual, and I think today's going to be a quick show because I've got lots to do. We're heading home today, so it is what it is. I'd seen this story kind of picking up steam. Michelle Rempel does a whole video about this, and she makes a big deal. Oh, bureaucrats don't break ranks unless they're told to. And not such a big deal for me. I don't like anonymous sources, and a lot of these are anonymous sources. They're bureaucrats. They're worried about their kids. It still seems, something to take with a grain of salt. It's interesting, that's for sure, though. Senator Linda Frum says, Iveson gives us a peek inside Freeland's Ministry of Finance. They have thrown up their hands and said, how much do you want to spend? There's a state of discouragement that I haven't seen in 25 years in Ottawa, said one senior bureaucrat. 25 years ago was 1995, and the 1995 debt crunch is what they're referring to here. Okay, National Post, and that's the referenced article in the tweet, says Trudeau's literally frightening spending plan has some Liberals bureaucrats very worried. The NDP have been referred to disparagingly as Liberals in a hurry, but the New Democrats will have to move lickety-split if they're to avoid being flattened like Wile E. Coyote by a Liberal Party shifting leftward at speed in this month's throne speech. One senior public servant described the expensive schedule of social programs coming down as a structural change in the way government in this country operates. The risk for Justin Trudeau and new Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is that if they spend too much too fast, they could estrange blue Liberals worried about economic growth and fiscal discipline. The throne speech details remain unknown to all but a few, but there are enough broad hints to make some Liberal MPs and supporters, not to mention senior public servants, very worried indeed. With 3 weeks until the government unveils its new agenda, the cracks are already beginning to show. Public servants in Canada have traditionally operated under cover of anonymity, unless your last name is Wernick, right? Rachel and Michael Wernick, the public servants who recommended the we thing, right? And former clerk to the Privy Council and ties to the PMO, blah, blah, blah. I don't mean to get sidetracked. I just want to make sure people understand who they're talking about here. Those are the same level of people that they're talking about, right? People who inhabit those jobs for multiple terms under multiple governments, right? So if you're liberal or you're conservative, you've got this team of bureaucrats under you. It's interesting, right? And who knows what their politics are, right? Yeah, okay, back to this. Public servants in Canada have traditionally operated under anonymity, blah, blah, blah. The exception has been the Department of Finance, which has often provided a challenge function to the government of the day, turning back the flood of requests from funding from other departments. The idea that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister are pulling at the opposite ends of the blanket took a hit under Bill Morneau. One Liberal MP called finance a vassal state during the first Trudeau mandate, but Morneau was determined to impose himself during the second mandate, which may be one of the reasons he was retired. I scroll down. The concerns are not just with the size of the spending package being considered, but with the nature of it. Senior business Liberals who advocated deficit spending in 2015 say the focus should now be on economic growth rather than redistribution of borrowed money. The lack of focus on growth is problematic, says Robert Aslin, the senior vice president of the Business Council of Canada, who was previously an advisor to Prime Minister Paul Martin and Trudeau. The new emergency benefit, CRB, of $400 a week will replace the CERB at the end of the month and will cost $22 billion over the next year. However, the Liberals have not ruled out the change being made permanent, effectively creating a guaranteed basic income. Critics point out that in many ways, CRB is much more generous than CERB, which cuts off benefits after recipients earn $1,000 in income. Under CRB, recipients don't see their benefits impacted until they earn $38,000 a year and don't see it clawed back entirely until they earn $58,800. A worker claiming CRB and working part-time is likely to earn more than a minimum wage earner working full-time. As the recovery takes hold, the concern among some economists is that the permanent CRB would be a disincentive to returning to the workforce, resulting in labor shortages. Another focus for Trudeau and Freeland in the throne speech may well be childcare. There is anecdotal evidence to suggest that daycare capacity has been reduced by COVID-19. What's more, the Bank of Canada noted in July that the employment rate for women has fallen by 6% because of the pandemic. Getting women back into the workforce will be a priority, and daycare provision will be crucial for economic growth. But Liberals with long experience in the field suggest the federal government is not well positioned to create childcare spaces. And then they go through their proof of that. I'm not sure. Back to this. Wayne Easter, the veteran Liberal MP and longtime chair of the House of Commons Finance Committee, said Freeland has been consulting broadly with caucus, with the business community, and with individuals who have experience in managing the economy in good times and bad. I think this is hilarious. Because Freeland doesn't have any experience managing a big economy. She doesn't even have a successful business to say, I built that. I understood cash flow, money in, money out, and blah, 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 all that stuff. She doesn't have any of that experience. So she's consulting individuals who have experience in managing the economy in good times and bad. Is that enough? How would you even apply that advice? Right? If you don't have the basic tools needed to plug in, and I understand she's a very intelligent woman, she's a Rhodes Scholar, apparently so is Bob Ray. None of that really matters if you don't understand the basics. If you're a Rhodes Scholar and somebody sits you down and says, can you program me a website using Python? Here's a computer loaded with the Python libraries that you need, and it should take you like 20, 25 minutes. You're a Rhodes Scholar, right? You get it. You're very smart. You understand, don't you? Have fun. We'll see you in 20 minutes when you should have a basic Hello World website up and running with Python. You Rhodes Scholar, you. Right? No, that's not how it works. And the same with finance. And I'm not a finance guy. Maybe it's even more complicated than that. Maybe it's like sending somebody who doesn't know how to fish or ride a boat out into the middle of the ocean and say, good luck, buddy. We'll see you at home. I hope you catch some fish. Maybe it's like that. But fundamentally, I think if you don't have any experience, it's probably a really bad idea to try something like that, right? It's probably a really bad idea to say, you know what? I've never done this before, but let's give it a whirl. Let's go, Canada, right? I've consulted people. He's a prince, I'll have you know. I keep getting these emails. If we give him $1,000, we'll make $10,000 or $1 million. Oh no, I'm sure he's the prince. I'm sure it's Nigeria or something like that. Okay, back to this. The finance minister will have been told by her colleagues that she needs to demonstrate that she has control of the public purse. Well, she's got control of it. It's open. She's like, how much does that cost? I need a website that has Hello World on it. I don't know why. Okay. A number of Liberal MPs say privately they're alarmed by the prospect of runaway deficits. An economic growth plan, including how we deal with the deficit over time, is critical, said Easter. If you don't have the basics, right? In a paper released this week, former Senior Finance Canada official C. Scott Clark and Peter DeVries projected the current $380 billion deficit could fall to more manageable levels within 5 years with no new spending, a deficit of $27 billion in 24-25, even if the debt to GDP ratio remains stuck at 50%. That's the best case scenario, but Trudeau and Freeland have signaled that they're itching to remake Canada in their own progressive image, and that means new spending. The prospect is troubling some of Ottawa's more seasoned public servants. Quote, "It is literally frightening. I am very worried about my kids' future and their capacity to service that level of debt. The fact that the government is embarking on a major policy shift, and this is a government that is not worried by deficits or 10% of GDP, say one person with knowledge of the situation. That would suggest annual deficits of $200 billion a year at a time when COVID has hampered economic growth prospects. Government debt in the U.S. will exceed the size of the economy next fiscal year for the first time since the Second World War, twice Canada's debt to GDP ratio. Compared to its peers, this country is in reasonable shape, so it would be too pessimistic to predict it is going to rain in biblical torrents. It is fair to say the sky is bruising, and we appear intent on throwing away our umbrella." Yeah, there's some concerning indications there, not least of which is the inexperience of the finance minister, and how do you meaningfully apply even good advice if you don't understand the basics of things that you're meant to be managing. And I've seen that through my career as well. Like you get principals who have education ministers or people coming through who are the people who are helping the education minister, and they don't understand necessarily, or they do understand, but they're coming at what they're seeing from a completely different angle. And a lot of the times the teachers, the youth care workers, the EAs, they're there working for the students, and the bureaucrats are there looking at micro instances of their macro policies, right? Like they're working with big numbers so big, they don't necessarily understand how it translates into the classroom. So they come and tour schools. Anyway, it's a quick aside, but an important one, right? Like if you're book learned, if you do have some knowledge and book learned and no experience in a classroom, you're going to come at it from a different angle and draw a different conclusion. If you have experience running a giant economy, and if you see indications that are worrisome because you've got experience, you're going to come at that differently than if you've asked some guys who know, right? If you've sent emails with some people who managed economies in good times and in bad, and they say this, you're going to have a different perspective on it, right? And that's notable. You have to think about that. And you should be aware of that as the finance minister, but also you should be aware of the deputy prime minister that you probably should not be moonlighting as the finance minister. Back to this. MSN, and this is probably CBC, or anyway, it's a commentary, it's an opinion piece. Trudeau overspent on COVID. Let's see if voters care. I think that's fundamentally where we're going with this. I think that's what's going to happen here. They're going to take this to the polls. I think we're in an election campaign. The proroguing is buying time. And I think the throne speech will, I don't know if it'll trigger an election right away or if they'll have 6 months to try it out. But man, the we stuff isn't going to go away because the Conservatives are going to bring it all back up. So it'll be happening through the next 6 months, right, into February of next year. But we'll see how it all plays out. Okay, here's the article. It's pretty mind-bending to stop for a minute, take a deep breath, and think about all the money Ottawa has blown out the door in pandemic relief spending. The Justin Trudeau government projected back in May that it was on pace to spend $152 billion in direct support to Canadians impacted by COVID-19. As the pandemic drags on, there's potential for that number to soar. The budget deficit is projected to swell more than 1,000% higher than expected, while Canada's accumulated debt may eclipse $1 trillion for the first time ever. Those are astronomical numbers, unimaginable before the pandemic struck back in the spring. And I scroll down. Another indicator, as a percentage of total GDP, Canada's overall COVID spending outpaced many other developed countries. Of course, there's another side to that story. Canada's success at managing the virus is certainly better than the experience of our closest neighbor and ally, the United States. I don't know what they're measuring success by here. Just notable. As Canadians as a whole are quite satisfied with Trudeau's pandemic performance, according to the polls. Yeah, if you look at the polls, there was no real impact from we, and he's very, very popular. The impact from we is it took his popularity from like 60% back down to the election in 2019. So he's still as popular as he was then, even with the scandals. Okay, back to this. Those polls are surely of great interest to Trudeau's governing Liberal Party right now, with Ottawa awash in speculation about a possible snap election call. I doubt Trudeau is worried about having to explain to voters why he was too generous to them during a once-in-a-lifetime crisis. And new Conservative leader Erin O'Toole could have a tough time making the argument anyway when the opposition barely squeaked in protest when the money was flowing. Did a lot of money flow to Canadians who probably didn't really need it? Clearly. What is less clear is if record spending, soaring deficits, and deepening debt will matter much to voters at election time. I don't know. Will a haphazard finance minister with no experience matter? Doesn't seem to. I think this is interesting. Moving on. CBC Politics is tweeting Tories, Liberals to stop taking wage subsidy. Conservatives say they'll pay it back. Conservatives are going to pay it back over time, not right away. We don't have the money for that. Are you crazy? COVID-19. CBC says Tories, Liberals to stop taking wage subsidy. Conservatives say they'll pay it back. Erin O'Toole's Conservative Party says they are no longer receiving the federal wage subsidy and will pay back the funds the party has received so far. The Liberals, meanwhile, say they will stop accepting the backstop but have no plans to pay back what they have received. The move by the Tories, follows on a promise that O'Toole made during the leadership contest to stop taking the CEWS and to pay back over time what the party has received. The Post goes on to say that O'Toole has challenged both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to follow his lead. The Bloc Québécois and People's Party of Canada did not apply for the CEWS. The NDP say they're not going to be dealing with that. They're going to continue taking the subsidy. Where is it, Anne McGrath? Here it is. We will continue to receive the subsidy to support our workers and their families, prevent layoffs, focus on priorities to support Canadians during the pandemic, said Anne McGrath, the NDP's national director, in an email to CBC News. So they were asked for comment and they said, yeah, we're going to keep taking it. So there you go. Some political parties are taking it, some aren't. Bloc and PPC are not taking it, and the rest were. Tories are paying it back. Interesting, right? Conservatives are still firing up their investigation letters. They're sending a letter lobbying, Liberals lobbying maybe family friendly, but is it legal? And this is about the MCAP and the home buying plan, and Miss Telford's husband, what's his name? Silver. Where is it? Rob Silver. And so this is yet another investigation, and it looks like the Conservatives are setting up a fall session that is going to just try and hold Justin Trudeau to account for all of his cronyism, right? All of his all of his programs that are given to mysteriously husbands and wives and back channels with brothers and sisters who have reason to discuss, but never would discuss those things that they're not allowed to discuss, right? That's all what we're watching here, right? So I think that the conservatives are setting up to make this an issue and make this a little bit of a show trial. And that's all it'll be. All it'll be is to get people upset about it, because unless the NDP are on board, even if the Bloc are on board, and if the Bloc are on board and the NDP flip, watch how long the Bloc go to support back to Trudeau. I'm so suspicious of it, right? Because you can skate one back and forth, right? All you have to do is survive the confidence vote, and then you can you can govern as if you've got a majority, which is what we're watching Trudeau do. So I think this is what the Conservatives' plan is. They're just gonna shame him and try and bring the government down that way, because convincing the NDP or the Bloc in private, when the rubber hits the road, when it's actually time to vote and bring the government down, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Trudeau's got it pretty wired, right? He's got that House of Commons pretty wired. Here's another one, distraction story. I'm not going to go through it, but whistleblowers troubled by Trudeau's warm words about Governor General Julie Payette. So they're trying to create this story that there's the controversy and all sorts of other stuff. She's not a great Governor General. There's a lot of issues, a lot of baggage with her, and she's created a lot of press in her short stint. But again, with all the other stuff going on, this is small potatoes, like really small potatoes. There's lots of other stuff to be focusing on, but the fact that there's more and more that's coming out about this just reinforces my idea that it's a distraction. This is interesting. Back to school has become a politicized mess. Yeah, it's really wild to watch. And like as each day ticks closer, it's like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I'm a parent, and we're watching all the recommendations and all sorts of other stuff. And it is very interesting, because it looks like the unions are using this to leverage to get what they want, which, you never let a good crisis go to waste. This is the perfect embodiment of that. But here's doctors who are saying, like, mandatory masks is just one aspect of the politicization. 6 feet apart, having kids playing outside, having access to the school. There's all sorts of associated issues. What if your kid's best friend's not in the same cohort at the same classroom, and reduced class sizes, classes or cohorts, blah, 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 blah. There's all sorts of stuff. But masks are another issue. Somebody was asking about the sick kids recommendations. This is the sick kid recommendations. High school, I guess they're talking about it. But basically they don't recommend masks for elementary school. They don't recommend masks for middle schoolers, especially if there's low transmission in the community. That's the kind of litmus test for it. So, I mean, that's interesting, right? It's interesting to know. But the politicization of it does not help the kids. It should not be politicized. Health should not be politicized. The school should be focused on teaching about how to read, how to write, how to think critically. We shouldn't be focusing on teaching our kids how to live best with COVID-19. That's a parent's job. And you can't just say everybody's going to get taught these basic morals. Like, it's not the school's job to teach morals. It's not the school's job to teach obedience for masks and things like that. And I think it's really just incredibly like a big overstep when the schools are mandating medical interventions actively during the day. And I think that especially against recommendations. And yeah, they're saying that they're going by the health unit, and well, that's how you access any exemptions, because they're governed by the health unit. All the exemptions are the same. So, look into it for your own area. I've looked into it for my area, and the process is fairly straightforward. I'll put a link up to what I did if you're interested. It'll be on CanadaReport.co, but when I get back from my vacation. And last couple of stories for today. One is the CNE may close. Permanent closure of the CNE, a very real possibility after $6 million loss. And that's sad, man. I remember going to the CNE. I remember getting those unbelievably unhealthy waffle things with ice cream, and like 2 big waffles and ice cream. And I can't remember if there was syrup on it. It was vanilla ice cream. There might have been syrup. It was very delicious and very messy. I remember watching the air show, and there was a crash. This is in the 90s. There was a crash, and everybody was on the lakeshore, like in cars, because of the crash. It was terrible. And then we went to the CNE, and somebody found out that the pilot had survived, and everybody was kind of happy. Weird memories, man. But you have to have the CNE in order to have those strange memories of strange food. Remember the cronut disaster of 2008? I think 2009 maybe, where the cronut had salmonella. CNE, right? You can't lose those memories. Okay, maybe we could lose the salmonella memory. Here's a good article that was tweeted out by a few people who are notable. And it talks about collective guilt, collectivism, and how this new post woke era is basically making classical liberal ideas the gateway to racism, right? Like, it's racist to want to improve yourself. It's racist to, well, there's so many ridiculous things that are racist. This goes through collectivism and why it's bad and who else practiced it, and painting everybody of one color or one religion or one whatever. All Greek people are X, all Canadian people are Y, all white people are X. That's not appropriate, right? Like, that's not, you can't do that. And yet that's exactly what these people are rushing to. That's exactly what they're running to and saying, this is the thing that we all need to think about now. This is the most important thing. What's most important? Your skin color. No, they're wrong. They're wrong, and they should be called out. And these tactics have been tried through history, and they've worked really well. And this is kind of a warning on why you should pay attention, because it's happening right now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and I'll be back to my regular garage tomorrow, probably. Fingers crossed, definitely. See you tomorrow. Have a wonderful, wonderful